Welcome to Friends Church, everybody. Appreciate the effort. Little like this, but whatever. I'm going to talk like this for the rest of the morning. You know how we always start messages where, I tell you this stupid thing that I just did? We actually have a rule. We don't have very many rules for speakers, but we have one rule. You never get to tell a story where you're the hero. Makes sense, right? People have, and maybe I shouldn't generalize this much, but often it seems like my life is easier than your life. Not true. My spirituality is easier than yours. Also not true. You'll hear more and more about that as we go. But today I want to break all the rules because whatever. Who's going to shoot me, right? I'm going to tell you a story where I think I might have been the hero. But ultimately, you guys get to decide today. So at different points I can ask you if I'm the hero or not. If I'm the hero, thumbs up. If I'm not the hero, thumbs down, okay? And be nice. A couple of weeks ago, maybe even months ago, we were at McLean Creek. So McLean Creek is just a little southwest of Calgary. It's a forest land use zone, which means you can ride a dirt bike there. Long story short, you get to go dirt biking. And that's all I really care about. Every Thursday night, I'm there with my buddies, dirt biking. So imagine about 10 let's average it out about mid-50 men, naked in a parking lot, as men do in parking lots, getting changed into our dirt bike gear. And one guy has the audacity to ask the question, why are we getting changed at this parking lot, not the other parking lot? Now, for those of you who've never been to McLean Creek, this doesn't make any sense, but the parking lot we're at has the world's worst graded gravel road in the history of man. Whoever rode the grader to get this road prepared for us to drive on should be fired immediately. It went from a bad road with a lot of washboard to an even worse road with even more washboard and now dust everywhere. So I'm driving down the road to get to the parking lot, can't see a thing, hopefully not going to run into somebody, but whatever, I can't see, so who cares? So when he asks, why are we staging here, it makes some sense, right? A 5-kilometer drive down a horrible gravel road, when the other parking lot, just on the other side, has a beautiful paved road all the way to it. I could literally have my windows open, getting fresh air. It's that clean. So when he asks, why don't we get ready at that section? Why don't we stage there? It makes some sense, right? Until my buddy, he says, in this kind of funny, squeaky voice, we said, why don't we stage there? And he said, that's where the gays are. I remember sitting there, and again, I'm naked, so this is a bit of an awkward time to be having these philosophical discussions, but I was like, what did you just say? And then he repeated it. And then I lost my shit. You know that whole Bible verse that says, if somebody says something you don't like, you should definitely yell at them for a long time and possibly berate them in public? I think it's 1 Vincent 2:3 or something. I can't remember oh yeah, there we go. It's right there. What would Jesus do? He would yell and swear at this guy for a long time. Like, you effing a-hole. And I went off on him. For the next half hour, whenever he tried to say, I would yell so loud at him in front of all the other guys that he couldn't even say a word. It was one of those, and I'm just like, and then I'm just berating him again. You homophobic son of a, and I'm just like, I am losing my mind. What did I do? I canceled his ass. For the entire rest of the ride, whenever he tried to talk, I would yell louder than him so no one could hear him. Anyone wanted to bring up the situation, I'd yell at them. Now, I don't want you to put up your hands, but has anyone ever been in that situation where somebody said something so egregious that you were just like, okay, you need to know that that's not okay? Now, some of you are looking at me going, Vince, you conflict-loving son of a gun. Okay, let's try this differently. Any of you had that thought in your head? Or maybe behind the anonymity of social media, all caps, lots of exclamation points, right? Why is it that we take care of things in that way? Someone says something about Black Lives Matter. Somebody says something about the industry you're in. Somebody says something about your profession. Somebody says something about whatever social issue is obviously a bit of a hot button for you. And let's be honest, the LGBTQ community and me, big fan, big supporter. You can say a lot of things about a lot of different people, and I'll let it slide. That one, there's too many people in my life that I love who identify that way. And suddenly I go from love your neighbor to take your neighbor out at the knees in public for as long as you feel like. Feels a bit awkward now, right? How much of our lives do we live in this culture that says if you misstep, we'll cancel you? I remember driving home from that little event. I was feeling pretty good. So let me ask you a question. Am I the hero of this story, or was I offside? Oh, come on, throw me a bone here. There's a whole lot of thumbs down for this. Hey, there we go. I paid her, that's okay. Why is it that we think that we can do that to people when they say things that aren't things that we like? I remember driving home feeling good, talked to my partner, said, hey babe, here's what happened. And as I'm telling her what happened, I suddenly have this sick feeling in my stomach that's like, that maybe wasn't my best moment in life. And she was super kind about it. She wasn't like, calling me out, although probably she could have. But really, when you look at the situation, it's complex, isn't it? There's a story that Jesus tells about a couple. The Bible stories are always funny because it seems like Jesus is walking down the street and these monumental things just happen in front of him, right? He's walking down the street and literally he walks into this big area and there's a man and a woman and a whole crew of people, and the people have stones in their hands. As we all do, when we're walking down the street, we run into these moments. I'm not sure how he finds out, but he finds out that the couple has just been caught cheating on their spouses. Nowadays, that's considered probably immoral and unethical. I'll let you decide. But in those days, sex, paternity, and finances were very, very closely tied. And so what to us is maybe a mistake or a bad choice, for them is a capital offense. The rule is, if you catch someone cheating on their spouse, you get to kill them. So they literally have stones in their hand, and they're going to throw stones at people until they're dead. How brutal is that, right? And what I find fascinating is, I have this sneaking suspicion that if I was in that group, I'd be one of those ones holding a stone. Just like when my buddy said something I didn't like, I picked up a verbal stone. Don't you dare say that. Jesus, in that classic way that we've kind of exemplified Jesus, stops the whole thing with one sentence. An entire mob ready to kill two people by hand, and one sentence stops, and he just asks this: if any of you have never made a mistake, go ahead, throw a stone. All you hear is stones dropping. You see, in this world of cancel culture, in this world of if you say something that I don't like, I can attack you, in the world that we're living in now, what do you think that line would do? If you've never made a mistake, go ahead. You guys know me. I got some serious road rage issues. I'm divorced. If you went back to my past sexual partners, I can almost guarantee you that I've done something wrong or not done something right or did something bad. I consistently say things when I should keep my frickin' mouth shut. You guys hear all the stories of my life, of all the dumb stuff I do, right? What right do I have to attack my friend? Why is it that I suddenly think that in this context, I'm better than him? And without any humility, without any awareness of who I am and all the stuff that I do, I literally attack him. Okay, now you can all give me a thumbs down. Let me ask you. And I'm not trying to bring shame here. It's not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to show that each one of us make mistakes. Each one of us see things differently. And how often have we, you heard mine, your case, where you stood up on your high horse and without humility, without awareness of all the mistakes you've made, attacked someone? Now, again, maybe you didn't do it verbally. Maybe it was on social media. Maybe it was just with your friends later. What would it have looked like if in that moment, on that parking lot, I'd have just remembered that, I make enough mistakes in my life that I should probably bring some humility to this? What would that conversation have looked like? What would your conversations look like? And yet, is it cool for him to say that in a public space and have me keep my mouth shut? Is that what we want in our public discourse? Is that how I want my friends to see me? Is it okay for him to lump an entire group of people from our world, us, entire group of us, and by tone of voice and by context say, there's something wrong with them and that's why we don't go there? Isn't there a time to call a spade a spade? Esmond, can you throw up the quote? There's a Bible story. It says this, again, remember, whenever they say God, think character in a story. Don't think this is God. This is how God works. This is just a character. So it says this. So God sent Nathan the prophet to tell the King David his story. When you hear prophet in this context, don't think somebody who can foretell the future. Think comedian. Should read like this. Then God sent Dave Chappelle to the rest of us. Prophets were the people who called stuff out, called a spade, did it when everyone else is like, I'm going to just keep my mouth shut. No. Prophets came and said, okay, that's not cool. So, that's what we think. Prophets, comedians, right? So then Dave Chappelle said to King David this story. There were two men in a certain town. One was rich, one was poor. The rich man owned a great many sheep and cattle. The poor man owned nothing but a little lamb he'd bought. He raised that little lamb and it grew up with his children. It ate from the man's own plate and drank from his cup. He cuddled in his arms like a baby daughter. It's kind of nice, huh? One day a guest arrived at the home of the rich man, but instead of killing the animal from his own flocks, he had a ton, he took the poor man's lamb and killed it and prepared it for his guests. Not cool. We all okay with that? Not cool? King David was furious. As surely as the Lord lives, he vowed, any man who would do such a thing deserves to die. He must repay 4 lambs to the poor man for the one he stole for having no pity. Is that all I have, Esmond, or do I have one more? Okay. Dave Chappelle calls out a spade. He does it by telling us a story. In the story, rich man steals the one thing the poor man had. King David freaks out, says, it's unjust. We can't do that. But what you guys don't realize is, though, a month beforehand, King David was sitting on top of his palace, as kings do, and he's looking out over the city. And he sees a beautiful woman having a bath on her roof in public, as women do, right? I like to bathe nude on top of my condo regularly. So just assume that that's normal behavior. Let that one go. He sees her, he falls in love with her, or in lust with her, or whatever. Reaches out, sends his people bring her, they hook up, they start getting connected, find out she's pregnant. Not awesome. She's married. She's married to one of the guys in the king's own army. So King David is totally choked at this story of the rich man stealing the one poor lamb when he's stolen the wife of one of his commanders. And it doesn't stop there. To get himself out of hot water, what he does is he sends an order and says, I want that husband in the center of the most brutal fighting of the war we're in. And of course, he gets killed. David has stolen the one thing, the lamb that the man had. Do we not call a spade a spade? Nathan, the prophet, the comedian, the guy who's willing to say what no one else is willing to say, says, wait, that's not cool. So isn't there times in our lives where we need to call someone out? Go through those stories in your head of the time someone said something, the times you read in the news where you're going, that's not right. That is not right. For people with my personality, I find it easy to call people out. I find it too easy to call people out, right? Some of you might need to call people out. What situations do you need to call a spade a spade? So on the one hand, we have humility. Who am I to call somebody out? On the other hand, we have a whole tradition of comedians from the Bible and current comedians who are calling stuff out. We can't let this stuff slide. It can't go unaddressed. My buddy says something horrific about the LGBT community. Or at least I think it's horrific. Don't I call a spade a spade? Thumbs up for me? Oh, got a few more thumbs up. Nice. Thank you. Ooh, I got a few sideways thumbs too. But maybe call out culture has gone too far. People are being called out for all kinds of things. Called out in ways that I don't know that I'm comfortable with. There's a story told to me by actually one of our board members. We were having supper. He told me the story. It's about a professor. Can you throw that up there so I can remember his name? Greg Patton. Professor of Clinical Business Communications. I don't actually know what that is, but it sounds really detailed. So he's discussing with a crowd of people in an online learning forum. So he's got kind of like a YouTube thing. He's teaching, they're listening. And he says, when we communicate in language, we often have two ideas, and we put breaks in between them. So instead of putting two ideas together and crunching them, we think our audience won't hear two ideas. So what we do is we put some thinking words in between. I think we should be humble when we address things. And yet, I also think we sometimes need to call a spade a spade. See, that break? Sometimes we use words, sometimes we use time, sometimes we use the word that. If you go into Chinese culture, this is the word that they use to put a break in there is spelled this way, N-E-G-A. Say that in your head for you. There's a bunch of different ways it's said. One of the ways it's said is nega. Does that sound like anything you've heard before? Some students complained that the professor was using an English racial slur for the black community. Was the professor using an English slur for the black community? He says, in Chinese, this is the word they use. This is how it's spelled. Is his pronunciation perfect? No. He's not a native speaker. But the fact that he says nega in a conversation that talks about thinking words in Chinese culture, has he done something wrong? Which way do you guys go? Do we think that he's actually making an English slur against the community of our people? No. He was pulled off the class. He was suspended as a tenured professor. He's under review currently for inappropriate use of language. So we have humility. Who the heck am I to call out people? We have Nathan the comedian calling a spade a spade. And then we have this situation where somebody called somebody out for something that I don't actually even understand how they got there. How do we do this? How would you guys handle the balance between those three things? How do you handle that? Another one of our board members put me onto this YouTube channel called ContraPoints. Anyone know ContraPoints? Oh, you'll thank me later. She is this amazing transgendered woman, half performance artist, half philosopher. I think she dropped out of her philosophy program in her PhD level, so she's sharp. But she dresses in these crazy costumes, and yeah, it's insane. It's an insane ride. But if you can follow through the ride, her points are spot on. In looking at cancel culture, she said, most people need two things to engage in cancel culture. I'm going to use two big words. Can you throw them up there for me? Abstraction and essentialism. Abstraction says we take something out of the context that it was in and we look at it just alone. What did that guy say? Nega. When we don't look at the context of he's quoting Chinese words, he's doing all this stuff, we don't take that. All we say is we abstract it out of the context and say, he said this. How much of that's going on in our lives right now? Someone takes a tweet from 5 years ago. We cancel them because of it, because they said this line. Now, all the body of their work doesn't support that, but that one line was offside. And so we abstract it from all the other work, and we look at it on its own and say, that shall not happen. What did I do with my buddy? Is his voice indicating that he's making a joke? It's not a great joke. Maybe it's a joke that shouldn't even have. But is he clearly saying, I'm making a joke by this tone of voice? Yes. He uses that tone of voice whenever he makes a joke. Essentialism. Essentialism says you take that abstracted line, that one line, and you make it the core of who the person is. When I kept yelling at my buddy that he's a homophobe, that's what I did. He makes a line, I take it out of the context of he's trying to make a joke, again, off-color joke, I don't know that that joke should be allowed, but he's clearly making a joke, I abstracted it, and now I'm making a comment on who he is as a person based on that abstracted piece. You're a homophobe. Do you see how we do this in life? Just let's take it out of the bigger context. How many times have you been with a friend or a partner and they said one line and you took it out of the context of all the things they've ever said and you're like, you are angry at me, or you hate me, or you blah, 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 or you... Abstraction. And then essentialism. Here's my thinking. If we need to call a spade, and we honor the humility of how we come to this, hey, look, I'm not better than you, whatever. Can we just talk about this? But in calling out the spade, what we say is if we need to do the mental gymnastics of abstraction and essentialism, maybe we shouldn't call it out then? What do you think? Is that a way for us to honor that, yes, we need to call certain things out, but if we have to do a bunch of gymnastics and take the one tweet that the person did 13 years ago and now apply it and take out their life, maybe we're having to do a little bit too much kind of mental gymnastics to get there. Maybe we need to see that in the context of everything they've ever said, of who they are, of all the whole person and all the conversation, all the context. What do you think? Could that be a guiding principle between the one hand not calling out calling a spade when I think we probably should, and on the other hand, firing a guy, canceling him for saying a word that's clearly quoting a Chinese word, but it sounds like an English racial slur. And so we cancel him. Could that be the balance? Let me end with a final story. I don't know about you guys, but I find that stories make me think deeper than anything else. I always think, give me the right story, we can change the world. I'm driving by my brother's house. He lives out in Kimberley, and there's a little hotel me and my wife were going to go stay at, and I wanted to go check it out. Drove a little out of town. A place called St. Eugene. Anyone heard of this place? Used to be residential school. Awkward. But it's turned into a really nice resort. Awesome. As I'm driving up, I see this picture of this. The St. Eugene Church, built in like 1890 something or other. Can you see on the top of that? What's the thing we see on the top of every church? A cross. Now, growing up, I was always taught that the cross was the most painful way the Romans had ever come up with to kill somebody. And thinking about it this week, I realized, no, it's actually not. Let's be honest, you can put someone on a rack for like 3 months and kill them slowly. It's not the most painful way to go. It's not an awesome way to go, but it's not the most painful way to go. So what is it? What do you do when there's somebody who's crossed you and you want to make sure everybody else sees that that's not okay? You nail them to a cross, you put them high above everybody else, and you let them die while everybody watches. All of their friends, all the people who think like them, all the people who are sympathetic to them. The cross is one of the most painful ways you can publicly show that if you cross us, you're going to pay. That's why we say, even in social context, even online, if I say that, I'll be crucified. The world will destroy me and everyone will watch it happen. You see, the thing is, the public nature of what I did, I put him on a cross to die in front of everybody. I showed all of his friends, all of our friends, that if you do this, this is what's going to happen. How much of our lives How much of our online conversation, how much of our social world right now is about public shaming? If you cross us in this way, we will crucify you. Here's my question. 2 questions. Is it helping people be more loving? When we crucify people for doing the thing we don't like, for the thing we don't want them to say, for whatever, is that actually helping? Or is it just like the Romans? If you cross us, this is what's going to happen to you. Our community exists to make the world around us a better place, right? That's why we're here. Crucifying someone in public, is that making our world a better place? My message is fairly simple today. Let me tell you how this story should have gone. And I'll see if you guys like that one better. Because right now, you can all feel you're all like, ugh. A bunch of mid-50-year-old men are naked in a parking lot. Somebody says, why don't we stage at the other parking lot? Somebody says a line that says something like, that's where the gays are. Now, the first thing I said, humility. The number of stupid things I've said in my life, I'm just glad I haven't been written down so I don't get destroyed. But what if I did this instead? Instead of standing in front of everybody and yelling and berating my buddy, what if I just went, hey, dude, do we want to have those kind of jokes in this group? Because I'm not sure. I have great friends who are gay, and this whole idea that, like, they represent the badness of this world that is the reason we don't go there, that feels a little off to me. How do you think that would have gone? We getting thumbs up now? You guys liking what I'm doing better? You know, later on, a couple of weeks later, some people came to me after and said, hey, you know what? My son's gay. Or, hey, I have this person in my life who's gay. And you could tell they didn't, my interaction, the way I handled it, they didn't speak up in that moment. I think they were scared I would crucify them. What does it look like to address the moments in your life with humility? I still think I needed to call him out. Not the way I did, but I don't think it's okay. A little while ago, I ordered a new snowboard. I had this crappy old snowboard, so I ordered a new one. Paid a guy, sent him the money. He needs to build them. They're all hand-built. 4 months later, sent him an email. Hey, buddy, where's my snowboard? Nothing. 2 weeks later, hey, buddy, where's my snowboard? Or where's my money? Nothing. Half a dozen emails, phone calls, finally leaving messages on his phone. Finally, I said this, look, if I don't hear from you in the next day or so, I'm going to social media and putting a comment on what's going on. You either need to get back to me and tell me what's going on, or I need to do something. I'd called him 3 or 4 times, left messages. I don't know how many emails I'd sent out just saying, hey, where are you? Nothing back. Is that an okay way to handle it, do you think? Remember, thumbs up, you're okay. Thumbs down, not okay. So there's a time when we need to call a spade, and there's a time when we can use the fear of crucifixion. Crucifixion? No, that doesn't work. Crucifixion. There we go. It helps, right? Luckily, I never had to do it. He finally called me and said, hey, look, I've had some issues in my life. The guy who finishes my stuff, his system broke, and I was so embarrassed I didn't even know what to tell you. And my answer was, it's all good, dude. When am I going to get my snowboard? He's like, well, it's going to be about 3 weeks later than I was hoping. Okay. Humility. But still calling a spade a spade. Remember abstraction and essentialism? Taking things out of the context that they were in, taking things out of how the person meant it. That was clearly a Chinese quote. My buddy was clearly joking. Is it okay? I don't know. I don't think so. But calling him a homophobe? I got to do a bunch of mental gymnastics to do it. The nice part is once I've done it, I get to attack him all I want, right? So what if I would have just approached him and said, hey, buddy, is that cool? Do we want to do that? Not attack him, not take it out of context, be right in that moment, even in the group. Maybe I should take him aside and just be like, hey, I don't think I'm cool with that. Can we talk about this? Maybe it's a conversation for the group. What do you think? How do you want to see these kind of things handled? Do you want a culture where we're all scared to be crucified? Do you want a culture where you get to crucify any misstep? Any comment that someone takes out of, oof, they say a little bit wrong, man, I'm going to destroy them. Is our motivation vengeance? Is our motivation public shaming? Is our motivation crucifixion, thank you? Or is our motivation love? That's what I'm going to leave you with today. What creates love in your life? It's not arrogance. It's not, I'm better than you, so I get to call you out. It's also not keeping silent. When you got to call a spade, keeping silent, that's no good either, right? But if it takes mental gymnastics, maybe that's when we step off and say, hey, you know what? I'm not sure what's going on here. But maybe crucifixion's not the right answer. And yet, sometimes, maybe the threat of crucifixion. If you don't get back to me and tell me where my snowboard is, I have to do something. You're not answering my phone calls. You're not answering my emails. Here's what I'm going to leave you this week. Is that kind of playground. Humility on the one side, calling a spade on the other side. But honoring, when calling a spade is built around this whole mental gymnastics that creates a situation where you can do things you wouldn't normally do. Abstraction, essentialism, take things out of context, attack the person for one thing they said. You are a racist, bigot, homophobe, idiot. But on the other side, realizing that crucifixion has power, but maybe it could be used with love. The comics of our day are saying cancel culture's gone too far. And I think in a lot of cases they're right. But I don't think it's an all or nothing. I think there's a path through this if we're open to wrestling this out. I probably need to go back to my buddy and apologize for how I handled it. Because I don't want to be that person who everyone's scared to be around. I don't think that's creating love in the world, and I don't think it's creating a better place. You? So everyone, take a deep breath. With humility, with honesty, with integrity. Let's love our world better, can we? Amen.